General Omar Bradley once famously said, "Amateurs talk strategy. Professionals talk logistics." We remember the Sherman tanks charging into battle. We remember the P-51 Mustangs screaming overhead. But in World War II, the most powerful weapon in the American arsenal didn't have a cannon. It didn't have armor plating. It had a cargo bed. Without gas, the tanks are just steel coffins. Without bullets, the infantry are just targets. This is the story of the unsung machines, the 6x6 workhorses, the quarter-ton scouts, and the massive tank retrievers that dragged victory out of the mud. These are the supply vehicles that paved the road to Berlin and to Tokyo. We begin with the face of the war, the vehicle that General Eisenhower called one of the 3 decisive weapons of the entire conflict, the Willys MB, known simply as the Jeep. It was tiny, just a quarter-ton 4x4, but it changed warfare forever. Before 1941, the Army used motorcycles and sidecars to deliver messages. The Jeep replaced them all. It was low to the ground, making it a hard target for enemy gunners. Yet it packed 60 horsepower in a frame that soldiers could literally lift out of the mud if it got stuck. But the Jeep was not alone. Enter the Ford GPW. To the untrained eye, it looks identical to the Willys. And that was exactly the point. The government demanded interchangeable parts. Whether it was built by Willys Overland or by Ford, the Jeep was the universal soldier. It served as a command car, an ambulance, a cable layer, and even a mobile altar for chaplains on Sunday mornings. It was the vehicle that could go anywhere and do anything. But what if the road ended at the water's edge? Then you needed the Ford GPA, nicknamed the Seep. It was essentially a Jeep wrapped in a boat hull. While it wasn't the most successful vehicle of the war, it sat too low in the water and was easily swamped by waves. It showed the desperate innovation of American engineering. They were trying to make a vehicle that knew no boundaries. If the Jeep was the eyes of the Army, the Dodge WC series was its muscle. Sitting comfortably between the tiny Jeep and the massive 2.5-ton trucks, we find the Dodge WC-51 and the WC-52. Soldiers called them beeps, or big Jeeps. These were rated for 3/4 of a ton, but they were tough, rugged. With a wider stance than the Jeep, they could traverse rougher terrain without tipping over. The WC-51 was a weapons carrier. It hauled squads of men. It towed 37mm anti-tank guns, and it carried the heavy ammo crates that kept the front lines firing. The WC-52 was identical, but it featured a powerful Braden winch on the front bumper, a lifeline when the European mud turned into quicksand. Then, there is the most recognizable silhouette of mercy on the battlefield, the Dodge WC-54 ambulance, built on the same reliable chassis. This metal box saved countless lives. Unlike the open-air Jeeps, it had softer suspension to protect the wounded men in the back. It had a heater for the freezing winters of the Ardennes. For many soldiers, the sound of that Dodge engine approaching was the sound of survival. But Dodge didn't stop at 4 wheels. They created the WC-63. They took the standard weapons carrier and stretched it. They added a 3rd axle to make it a 6x6. This was a 1.5-ton beast designed to tow heavy artillery through the dense jungles of the Pacific. It bridged the gap between a light truck and a heavy hauler. Now, we arrive at the legend, the backbone of the Red Ball Express, the truck that arguably won the war, the GMC CCKW, affectionately known as the Jimmy. Over 500,000 of these were built. It was a 2.5-ton, 6x6 masterpiece. Why was it so important? Standardization. Every mechanic knew how to fix it. Every driver knew how to drive it. It had a banjo-style axle and a 270 cubic inch engine that simply would not quit, whether it was hauling fuel to Patton's tanks or rations to the front lines. The Jimmy was always there. It was the primary vehicle of the Red Ball Express, the famous truck convoy system that kept the Allied armies supplied as they raced across France after D-Day. Drivers would drive for 20 hours a day, pushing these trucks to the breaking point, and the trucks took it. But the GMC wasn't the only hero in this class. We must talk about the Studebaker US-6. While the GMC served the Americans, the Studebaker saved the Eastern Front. Under the Lend-Lease Act, thousands were sent to the Soviet Union. The Russians loved them. They were robust. They were reliable in the freezing cold, and they became the platform for the terrifying Katyusha rocket launchers. The Studebaker US-6 is truly the unsung hero of the Eastern Front. And let's not forget the International Harvester M56. While the Army took the GMCs, the Marines and the Navy relied on International. These trucks were built to withstand the saltwater and coral dust of the Pacific Island hopping campaigns. They featured a locking differential that made them incredible climbers, which was essential for the steep, volcanic islands of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. There was also the oddity, the Chevrolet G506, a 1.5-ton 4x4. Smaller than the Jimmy, but larger than the Dodge. It was often used for specialized roles, bomb service trucks for airfields, earth borers for engineers, and signal corps vans. It was the quiet professional of the motor pool. Sometimes, the supply trucks themselves needed saving, or worse. A 30-ton Sherman tank would throw a track in a ditch. That is when you called in the heavyweights, the Diamond T969. This wasn't just a truck. It was a mobile garage, a 4-ton wrecker with twin booms on the back. It could lift engines, it could tow broken trucks, and it could serve as a mobile repair station right on the front lines. It was beautiful, rugged, and incredibly complex. But for the biggest jobs, you needed the Diamond T980. This was a prime mover. Its job? To haul the M19 tank transporter trailer. When a tank was too damaged to move, the 980 hauled it away. It had a massive Hercules diesel engine, which was rare for U.S. trucks at the time, and it was built like a locomotive. Then there was the White 666. Yes, that was its official designation, a 6-ton, 6x6 monster. It stood taller than almost anything else on the road. It was used for bridging operations, carrying the heavy pontoons that allowed the Allies to cross the Rhine River into Germany, and the Mack NO, a 7.5-ton artillery tractor. This vehicle had one purpose: to tow the massive 155mm long Tom field guns. It didn't look like other trucks. It had a flat, brutalist front end and massive tires. It could drag artillery through mud that would swallow a man whole. Finally, we have the vehicles that defied the laws of nature, the DUKW, pronounced the Duck. It was a GMC truck inside a watertight shell. It solved the hardest logistics problem of the war. How do you get supplies from a ship at sea to the soldiers on the beach? No docks? No problem. The Duck swam to shore, engaged its wheels, and drove the cargo straight to the depot, and for the places where wheels were useless. The M29 Weasel. Designed originally to attack heavy water plants in Norway, this tracked carrier became the ultimate all-terrain supply cart. It could float, it could climb snow-capped mountains, and it could traverse swamps. It was the supply sprite that went where no truck dared to go. They weren't glamorous. They didn't get the glory of the fighter planes or the tanks. But without the GMC Jimmy, the Willys Jeep, and the Diamond T, the war would have ground to a halt. These steel lifelines carried the fuel of victory. They proved that while firepower wins battles, logistics wins wars.